The Newhall Saugus area, as the Santa Clarita Valley was known, was still an agricultural area in the early years of the 20th century, with wheat, alfalfa, and other crops to be harvested. For the farm workers who traveled from ranch to ranch, Santa Clarita was part of a larger agricultural belt that spanned all the way from the citrus orchards of Ventura County to the fertile San Joaquin Valley. I'm Leon Warden, and this is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History. Joining me as the co-host for tonight's show is Gloria Mercado, an educator and lifelong Santa Clarita resident. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Our guest tonight is Mike Corralejo, a man who witnessed almost all of the 20th century in greater Los Angeles. He remembers the horse and buggy days, and as you'll hear, he was present for some significant events in Santa Clarita history. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you.
Now, going back quite a ways, even before you were born, I understand revolution was underway in Mexico when your father fled, and he was facing a firing squad, wasn't he?
That's right.
When was that?
That was just a time I was on Porfirio Diaz as president. Anybody that didn't work a piece of land, he had to, or else he would face a firing squad.
And this was about 1912, somewhere in there?
Yeah, about 1908.
About 1908.
Yeah, that's when it started.
And so he wasn't working the land?
No, my dad was a merchant. Buy stuff up there, go and sell and buy and bring back and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's what he was doing. He wasn't working for nobody.
Entonces, en 1908, ese es cuando fue la revolución, donde... Sí. ¿Y quién vivía allí, en México?
Mi papá, and la primera esposa, y se murió de una epidemia que había, y se casó con mi mamá, y se vinieron para El Paso.
¿Y por qué se vinieron al Paso?
For the same reason that Porfirio Diaz. You had to trabajar the land or else you would face a firing squad. Nobody would be laying around or something like that.
Now, he went to Texas, and then he came to Los Angeles?
Yeah. He got a job at the railroad, working the railroad lines, and he didn't go east nor north. He came west to California.
What kind of work with the railroad?
Building up the
laying track?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Entonces, cuando se salió de México, su papá, ¿qué hizo? ¿A dónde fue?
Tenía que trabajar la tierra. Y él era merchant, compraba cosas aquí y vendía acá, compraba aquí y vendía. No trabajaba para nadie. Y no lo quisieron, lo andaban procurando, pero los Corralejos eran haciendados. Tenían una hacienda, well-to-do. And el uncle of my dad le dijo que se viniera, le dio dinero y que se viniera para los Estados Unidos porque lo iban a firing squad.
Sí, fusilar, lo iban a fusilar.
Yeah.
Y luego se vino del Paso a Los Ángeles y luego dijo que trabajó ¿dónde en Los Ángeles?
No, se vino para El Paso y ahí agarró trabajo en the railroad.
Sí, en el ferrocarril.
Yeah, he was living in a camp ahí en uno de los carros and came west. He said that they were going north, east, and west, componiendo el
ferrocarril.
Railroad, yeah. And he took the west one, came towards Los Angeles. Yeah.
And so when he came to Los Angeles, he had already married his second wife, your mother.
Right.
And you came along in 1913?
Yeah.
You were born in Whittier, right?
That's it.
You remember the old Pueblo of Los Angeles and what that was like?
Oh, yeah, I remember when I was a kid, yeah. It was way different than what it is now. I mean, you could get restaurants that will feed the poor, and you had to go whatever they send you when they were feeding you.
Right.
To do a little job here and there. In other words, you weren't getting the eats free.
Right. Now, were there still, horses and buggies in Los Angeles, hitching posts around the...
That's right, around the plaza. The placitas around here, they had hitching posts all around.
Yeah.
Dígame entonces de sus memorias que tuvo aquí cuando era niño. Estaba hablando del pueblo, ¿verdad? De Los Ángeles y el enganche para los caballos.
That's right.
¿Y qué más?
Y el streetcar vino, and they built the railroad to Torrance and all through there, because one of my sisters lived over there from my dad's first marriage, and we used to go up there in the streetcar. And then I remember clear in the mornings in Main Street, there would be the milk wagon. It would be a wagon with a horse pulling the horse, and would stop every somewhere and leave milk.
Qué interesante entonces que había los camiones eléctricos, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
Y luego, ¿qué me decía del camión de la leche? ¿Qué dijo?
Dejando leche en frente de las tiendas que compraban la leche y para adelante y luego. And la placita had a fence all around de madera, de palo.
Sí.
And they hitching posts for the horses.
Para los...
And everybody had his horse all around there, hitched up, some for work, some for delivering and all that stuff, but they were all horses all around, and they would sell the grain there for the horses.
Now, you ended up moving out to Moorpark when you were fairly young, right?
I was 8 years old. Yeah.
How old were you when your father died?
1927, and I went from 13. So I was, 14?
Now, I understand he got into a car accident. Tell me that story.
We went to Santa Paula, and coming up the Fillmore grade. You've been there. It used to be rough. And my dad had a Dodge screen truck. And we had a flat tire coming down right off from the top down. We had a flat tire. So we parked. My brother parked right there. He was driving, and I was there, and my dad, and my smallest brother. Anyhow, had a flat tire. And coming down the grade was a lot of curves and all that stuff. And there, it was already, the sun was setting, and some kids were coming from Fillmore. We call them gringos. They were white kids. And we were parked right here. They made a turn coming down from a top. The turn is still there, but not that sharp. Very sharp, and then back this way, and then hit the road that goes to Moorpark this way and down. Right there, the kids were coming fast on a Dodge car, touring. Came down and slid it this way, so they went leading that. They turned the other way, and they came towards where we were fixing that flat tire. They came and they hit me first, and then hit my dad. But my dad, they caught him square, in the body. Me, they just hit me in the head. Yeah.
Dígame en español entonces, después que se movió de Los Ángeles, si vinieron a Moorpark. Y dígame acerca de su papá, lo que le pasó.
No venimos a Moorpark. Fuimos a la Limonera. Allá vivimos en Santa Paula, en la Limonera. Y luego de ahí venimos
¿Ahí es donde
para...
murió su papá?
¿Ah?
¿Ahí es donde se mató su papá?
No, en la Fillmore Grade, yendo para Moorpark en Fairview,
Sí.
above Moorpark. Anyhow, from there, we came and lived in El Rio. From El Rio, we got a horse and buggy, and we had a big wagon too. So we moved to Moorpark in during the First World War.
Y este es después que se murió su papá en el accidente.
El accidente.
Después de eso.
Después de eso, we lived there in Moorpark. Mm-hmm. We had a home there, and then I had to quit school and start working.
After your father passed away.
Now, did they catch the kids who hit him?
Yeah.
Were they punished or anything, or no?
But in them days, they didn't care much for a Mexican.
Mm-hmm. What were the hardships like for your mother raising a family? How did she cope? How did she survive?
Well, I had two brothers older than me, mm-hmm. and we still kept going. The apricot harvest, mm-hmm. we went to work right there with a hitch ranch every year, and then the walnuts with the orchards. Mm-hmm. We made quite a bit of money. We were 9 in the family.
Right.
Yeah.
Entonces había 9 en la familia y después que su papá murió, entonces ¿quién trabajaba?
I had 2 big brothers.
2 hermanos.
Mm-hmm. Sí. And y yo comencé a trabajar when I was 13 years old.
13 años comenzó a trabajar. Mm-hmm. ¿Y qué hizo? ¿Qué clase de trabajo?
Farm.
También en el rancho.
I used to stay at the ranch, and summertime when not school, I used to stay in the ranches and come home once a week.
So you started working very early.
Yeah.
Did you go to school at the time? What was your formal education like?
Well, I mean, I went to school up to the 8th grade. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's before my dad got killed, though. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, back a few years, you were traveling, I guess, with the harvest between Ventura County and Fresno.
Yeah. Went 2 years to Fresno.
Did you come up over the old ridge route?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, it was terrible. You had to get down and help push. I was a little bitty kid, and I wanted to get down too and help push a car. There's some places right there was very steep and narrow. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is like the early 20s. The ridge route was built in 1914, 15. This would have been the early 20s, right?
Yeah, and it was dirt road. Yeah.
What kind of car or truck did you take up over that?
A Ford. Mm-hmm. A Ford flatbed.
Ford flatbed truck?
Yeah.
Dígame entonces, en ese tiempo, entonces usted pasó por lo que se llama el Ridge Route, esta ruta, y díganos en español, ¿cómo era? El camino, ¿verdad?
El Ridge Route estaba angostito. Y si se encontraba uno con otro, tenía que hacerse un lado. Había places where se hacen para un lado and park and let them come back. Then they didn't go both ways.
I imagine you had to carry extra water and gas to get up over the...
And there was a gas station close to the top.
Way at the top, up by Sandberg's, I guess, or by the old Tumble Inn.
Yeah, that's it. And that hotel was there. Mm-hmm. And
did you stay in the hotel?
No, stayed outside, made a fire, and everybody sleep around it and all this stuff.
Really? Yeah. Were there a lot of other people doing that same thing?
Yeah.
Entonces no se estaban en el hotel.
Yeah, we went over to work. I mean, my dad took us over to work, not to spend money. He didn't want to spend money. We didn't have hardly any. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
¿Y qué clase de cosecha? ¿Por qué trabajaban? ¿Dónde trabajaban en el field? ¿Qué era la cosecha?
That we went to Fresno, grape,
Las uvas.
big grapes, yeah.
Uvas. Ujú.
Yeah, so much a tray. Yeah, like Moorpark, the apricots. So much a box.
Entonces los chabacanos y las uvas y qué más.
A nuez in Moorpark.
Nuez y limones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you also, helping with the harvest of crops here in the Santa Clarita Valley at that same time, or was it really just Ventura and Fresno? Were there also things to do here in the Santa Clarita Valley?
Yeah, but nobody comes up too far. Mm-hmm. We were around Moorpark and Simi, Saugus, as far as Camarillo, the bean harvest, and the walnut and apricots. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it was.
Now, I guess it would have been about a year or so after your father died, 1928, March 12, the St. Francis Dam in Saugus broke. And of course, the water came crashing down the canyon at midnight on the 12th, and on the 13th, for about 5.5 hours, the water came down and traveled down the Santa Clara River Valley and dumped out into the ocean, and about 450 people died. Yeah. Now, you have a story about that morning, don't you?
Yeah.
You were living at Moorpark.
That's right.
And tell me what it was like when that morning of the 13th of March in 1928.
It was, the first thing we knew was that there was going to be no school because we seen a flatbed truck. We lived in the Grand Canyon coming down from Fillmore to Moorpark. Mm-hmm. And the road that goes down comes from Fillmore. So we seen bodies of people, about 4 or 5 of them. You see their feet because they won't cover all the...
Lined up in the back of the truck.
We knew there was some trouble, but nobody knew unless he was told that what had happened up there. We learned what was happened then, that the dam had broke. Then my brother didn't go to work, and we had a truck, and he loaded up with somebody that want to go and see in Bardsdale, this side of Fillmore, this side of the bridge is Bardsdale.
Right.
And we were that far, and we started walking around. Then they want us to work and start digging for bodies of people.
They wanted you to work, but doing what? To help dig out the body?
Get the brush off of brush. Big piles of brush used to form with the water. The water would hit a tree that wouldn't fall, was a big tree or something.
Right.
There's the brush stopped building up, and there's where they found the bodies.
So there were bodies in the brush, and there were probably animal bodies also.
Yeah, animals, horses. Yeah.
Entonces, si me dicen, ¿qué es lo que ocurrió entonces cuando la presa se quebró? Y el 12 de marzo, ¿verdad? Dígame lo que ahorita dijo, ¿verdad? En inglés, lo que ocurrió.
En las escuelas anunciaron que no había escuela porque lo que había pasado allá se había reventado la presa. Y querían gente, hombres que fueran a ayudar a look for bodies.
Para buscar a cuerpos.
Cuerpos, sí.
¿Y usted vio los cuerpos?
Y yo miré 2. Afuera de la brush, limpiarlos, 2 mujeres.
2 mujeres.
Y los traían para Moorpark. Tienen una como mortuary en Moorpark, la hicieron right away. So the bodies were cleaned and everything right there.
Now, why would they have taken the bodies all the way to Moorpark instead of to Fillmore?
The bridge was gone.
Okay, so it was impassable, even though
It was
Bardsdale was
impassable.
close to
That's right.
Fillmore. Mhm.
Yeah, otherwise they would have taken it right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there, of course, all the crops were lost. Did the farmers try to save the crops that morning and get the lemons off of the trees?
No. What they were trying to save and they couldn't save was stock. There hardly anybody had tractors.
Mm-hmm.
So they had horses and mules.
Right.
And you could see the poor animals and cows laying dead.
So they tried to save the livestock that they
Yeah,
could. Mm-hmm.
a lot of them saved some because they opened the gates and let them run away or something. Yeah,
Right.
Entonces todo lo que podían salvar eran los animales,
that's right.
caballos y qué más.
And I remember seeing where they found a woman in the brushes, a young woman, Americana Blanca, con freckles. Yeah, they cleaned her up with a hose, cleaned the body up.
So they cleaned off the bodies before taking them over to the morgue, huh?
They took the mud and all that stuff off. Then they took them to Moorpark and this side because the bridge was gone to go to Fillmore.
Right.
Yeah. And as the stock was all cows and horses, they used to have horses in the farm, and they were all gone.
Was it mostly white people or mostly Latinos who you saw the bodies?
White. Yeah, the farmers and all stuff, because the Latinos would go into Fillmore, and Fillmore, the north side of Fillmore wasn't hurt hardly any.
Well, yeah, I guess it makes sense that it would have been the farmer family, since it happened in the middle of the night. It would have been the people who lived there,
Yeah.
as opposed to the workers.
Entonces los que murieron fueron más
Más gente blanca, americanos.
americanos. ¿Y por qué?
Porque son los rancheros and los que vivían allí, trabajaban en el rancho. They would have casa para dormir. Yeah.
Did you know any people, any of the victims who died? Did you know any of them?
Two of them.
Really?
They were sons of farmers from Moorpark.
Uh-huh.
They were married and living up that way.
Yeah. Entonces usted conoció a gente que murió.
Sí.
¿Y cómo? ¿Eran amigos de la escuela o
No, rancheros.
eran rancheros?
You were already out of school by that time.
Who?
You weren't going to school anymore by that time.
Yeah.
Right?
I went to school till I was about 17, 16.
Oh, okay.
In grammar school.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not only me, there were a lot of boys, Mexican boys, that we were old and we were still going to school. Yeah, yeah.
Now, you would have been, let's see, you were born in 1913. You would have been about 14 years old when the dam disaster happened. How long after that, how many years were you still working the farms and the fields? Did you continue to do that in the 30s and 40s?
Yeah, I was in 34, 34, something like that. Yeah.
What kind of crops do you remember there being in the Santa Clarita Valley?
Right here was a bean farming, raised a lot of beans. Yeah.
Entonces usted trabajó en el campo hasta la edad de 34.
Yeah.
Desde el 34.
I used to be in my school vacation. I would work on a ranch and stay over there. My dad used to take me up there and leave me up there. And that's the school vacation. Then when school started, he went after me.
Now later on, you ended up establishing a construction company in San Fernando, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Now you're retired from that? Are you still doing it? Or are you still running it?
retired.
Okay.
Y se retiró de construcción entonces. ¿Y dónde estaba su negocio?
Cement contractor,
¿Y dónde?
right here,
Aquí, en el Valle de Santa Clarita.
Santa Clarita, and I went as far as Whittier to do some jobs in Moorpark and see me. I mean, I was pretty good, going pretty good.
Well, I hate to cut you off, but we're out of time. So I want to thank you for joining us, and for all your answers to your questions about Santa Clarita history, visit scvhistory.com on the internet or stop by the Saugus station Saturdays or Sundays 1 to 4. Thank you for joining us for Legacy Santa Clarita's Living History. I'm Leon Wharton. Good night.